Preston Campbell didn't explode onto the NRL scene with hype. He was not the next big thing, but across 14 seasons, he built a career NRL players can only dream of. Dally M medalist, Premiership winner, first ever Gold Coast Titan signing, creator of the NRL All-Stars game, mentor, leader, but most importantly, trailblazer. His name doesn't come up in the GOAT debates, but ask anybody who played with him or against him, and they'll tell you Preston Campbell left a mark on the game that goes way beyond stats. This is the full story, from bush footy to the big stage and everything in between. Welcome to Harbour NRL, let's kick off. Preston Campbell was born on June 7th, 1977 in Inverell, New South Wales, but he hails from the tiny town of Tingha. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, by the way. Correct me if I am wrong. Tingha is a tight-knit Aboriginal community where everyone knows everyone, where family and culture mean everything. Campbell grew up in a loving, supportive family and was actually part of a Rugby League family. He's a cousin of former NRL try-scoring wizard Nathan Blacklock and 2024 Hall of Famer Greg Inglis. But despite these rugby genes, young Preston didn't even play organised league as a little kid. In fact, he didn't take up footy until his teens, which is pretty late in a sport where most kids start before they're even in primary school. So what was he doing before then? Preston fell in love with rugby league from the sidelines first. As a boy, he'd watch the local Tingha Tigers play, soaking up the atmosphere and dreaming one day he would be out there. He finally got his chance in his mid-teens, joining the Inverell Hawks Junior Club and immediately showing a spark of talent. Still, he was tiny, even fully grown. Preston stood 5'6" and weighed around 70 kilos, making him one of, if not the smallest player around. But what he lacked in size, he made up for with sheer determination and a f***ing killer step. Those who saw him play noticed his speed, the step, and the fearless attitude. It didn't matter if the other kids were a head taller, Preston just went for it. But leaving home was another challenge altogether. When his ability on the field became clear, opportunities came knocking, but it meant moving away from the comfort of his family and community. Preston has spoken about how difficult it was to leave Tingha to chase his rugby league dream, which is totally understandable. An 18-year-old kid who'd hardly travelled beyond his rural hometown, suddenly relocating to a big unfamiliar place. It was daunting, but with his family's blessing, Preston took the leap. Little did he know, this was the first step in his incredible 14-year career. Preston's break came when scouts from the Gold Coast Chargers noticed his raw talent. The Chargers, a now defunct NRL club on Queensland's Gold Coast, took a chance on a skinny teen from Tingha. They brought him into their system right after he finished high school, and in 1998, Preston made his first grade debut for the Gold Coast Chargers as a live wire winger. A year or two earlier, he was playing local juniors, and now he was running out into an NRL stadium. He was so new to this world that the club even based him in the quieter suburb of Carrara, specifically to keep him away from the bright lights and distractions of the Gold Coast party scene. The focus was purely on footy. That first season, the Chargers struggled. In fact, 1998 would turn out to be their last season before the club folded. But in their final game of the year, Preston Campbell gave everyone a glimpse of the star he would become. In a match against the Sharkies, he was again on the wing and showed out, sparking a second half comeback that nearly caused a huge upset, and Cronulla's coach at the time, the veteran John Lang, took serious notice of young Preston. Who is this kid and how the hell do we get him? When the Chargers club was disbanded after 1998, Campbell suddenly found himself without a team, but not for long. Cronulla swooped in to sign him for 1999, impressed by that one standout game and his obvious potential. Still, even with a contract in hand, Preston faced an uphill battle at Cronulla. The Sharks were a strong, star-studded squad in 99, with players like Andrew Eddinghausen, Matt Rogers, Brett Howland, Chris McKenna, and even David Peachy. They finished that year top of the table, and the little newbie from Tingha was understandably low in the pecking order. For the next 2 seasons, Campbell mostly bided his time in reserve grade, only filling in occasionally when first grade players were injured. And to say the least, it must have been frustrating. Here he was itching to prove himself, and in a way had already showcased his abilities when he played at the Chargers, but some skeptics still thought he was too small for the big league. He could have easily lost motivation or gotten complacent, but those who knew him say Preston just kept training hard and stayed positive. Flashing that trademark humble smile, Cronulla fans slowly grew to adore him. Even in brief cameos, his energy was contagious, and his humility off the field made him easy to root for. But they had no idea the explosion that was coming. And 2001 was the year everything changed. Fate intervened through a little bit of bad luck. An injury to Cronulla's star fullback David Peachey early in the season opened up a spot in the Sharks starting lineup, and John Lang knew exactly who to call up. He gave Preston a shot as a fill-in fullback, and Preston grabbed the opportunity with both hands. From the moment he stepped into that role, it was like unleashing a secret weapon. Campbell's speed and step made him a nightmare for defenses, and he had this fearless way of chipping into the attack despite his size. Very quickly, he went from bench warmer to the Sharks' X-Factor, with fans even giving him an affectionate nickname, Apricot, since, their star fullback was already David Peachey. We'll call him Apricot. The nickname stuck, and so did Campbell's spot in the team. Even after Peachey returned from injury, Campbell had earned his place. Cronulla lacked a dominant halfback, and Lang made a bold call. He moved Campbell into the number 7 jersey, and that switch lit a fire under the team. With Campbell running the show, Cronulla surged through the back half of the season and went on a finals run that excited the fans. And in the 2001 final series, Cronulla beat Brisbane and then obliterated the Dogs 52-10 in one of the most dazzling displays of attacking footy we've ever seen. Keeping in mind that this was a Bulldogs team that was second on the ladder, winning 17 games, tying 3 and only losing 6. Campbell was unstoppable, but the Sharks narrowly missed out on a grand final berth, falling to Newcastle. But one thing was clear for the future: Preston Campbell had arrived. That same year, Campbell was awarded the 2001 Dally M medal as the NRL's Player of the Year, beating out Andrew Johns by a single point. The smallest player in the league was crowned the best, and the fans loved it, his peers respected it, and his rise was now complete. But footy can be a cruel game. In February of that 2001 season, the coach that believed in Campbell, John Lang, announced his decision to leave the club and sign with the Panthers following that season. On top of that, in 2002, the Sharks brought in Brett Kimmorley, an obvious marquee halfback signing, and suddenly Preston was squeezed out of the halves, and the new coach, Chris Anderson, didn't see him as part of the game plan, even trying to move him to hooker, and the experiment just did not work. Campbell struggled, was benched, and eventually dropped altogether. In the space of 12 months, he'd gone from Dally M winner to reserve grade, and his mental health took a severe hit. And without going into too much detail out of respect for Preston Campbell, we'll just leave it as being a really dark time in his life. The man who brought so much joy to fans was fighting a silent battle, feeling lost and unwanted. Fortunately, with the support of family, friends, and teammates like David Peachey, he pulled through. He opened up about his struggles and found the strength to ask for a release from Cronulla. And with just covering the extremely dark place Preston Campbell was in at the latter end of his time with the Sharks, you'll be ecstatic to know that he too signed with the Panthers. And as we know, John Lang, the coach who first believed in Campbell, had moved to Penrith and immediately signed him for 2003. I can only imagine John Lang would have offered him a contract regardless of what happened with the Sharks, but better to get it done sooner rather than later with asking for the release. This opportunity wasn't just a lifeline, it turned out to be destiny. That year, the Panthers shocked the league by going from underdogs to the top dogs, or cats, whatever you want to call it. Preston played every minute of every game, back in the halves, but this time at 5'8", guiding the Panthers' young squad to the top of the table and ultimately the 2003 NRL Grand Final. That night at ANZ Stadium, the Panthers faced the Chooks. Campbell kicked 2 goals, played his heart out, and helped Penrith win one of the most iconic Grand Finals ever. You can only imagine the roller coaster of going from Dally M winner to being thrown into reserves a year later and then hoisting the Proven Summons trophy a year after that. This 3-year transition was amazing. It was absolutely poetic justice. He stayed at Penrith until 2006, making the preliminary finals in 04 and barely missing out on the semis in 05, before making one final symbolic move, returning to the Gold Coast to become the very first signing of the brand new new Gold Coast Titans. And from 2007 to 2011, Campbell helped build the Titans from scratch, now entering his 30s, transitioning to mentoring young players and guiding them to their first finals appearance, showing what leadership really looked like. In 2008, even being the club's Player of the Year. He retired in 2011 after 267 games, 84 tries, and one of the most respected careers in the modern era. But his greatest impact might have been just as much on the field as it was off the field. In 2010, Campbell helped launch the NRL All-Stars concept, a match celebrating Indigenous excellence. He captained the Indigenous All-Stars in the first match, which they won, and the Man of the Match award, well, it was named the Preston Campbell Medal. He also launched the Preston Campbell Foundation, which helps Indigenous youth through mentoring, education, and employment programs. His post-footy life has been about giving back, about showing kids from small towns that they too can be great. And as we all know today, his son Jaden Campbell now wears the Titans jersey, carving his own path. And he is one of the most exciting players that we have to offer in today's game. Preston's story is more than just rugby league. He didn't chase headlines and he never chased the spotlight. But what he built both during and after his playing days outlasted the 80-minute whistle. And personally, stories like this are the ones that hit different. Because Preston didn't just walk away from the game, he turned around and reached back to help the next person coming through. He used his platform to uplift others, to create opportunities, and to pass on everything he learned the hard way. It's very similar to the impact on what Greg Inglis did after his career. It's a very rare thing for an NRL player to do, and most importantly, it's powerful. That's why his legacy matters. Not just because of what he did on the field, but because of how he used his success to give back to the people that needed it most.